Today's guest is someone who is earning a six-figure income and found himself in a six-figure debt mess. Let's find out what happened and how Brian solved his problems. Welcome to Richer Soul, your journey to a more purposeful, intentional, amazing life. Where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? Let's figure that out together. At the core is the financial well-being to be able to do what you want, when you want, how you want. It's about personal freedom and abundance. Please check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/Richer Soul. That's where I share interesting articles that I've read during the past week. Also, if you get a chance, visit the website, richersoul.com. You can sign up for my email list. I don't send many emails, but if there's something important or some bonus material, that's the best way to find out about it. Please take a moment to sign up. So, are you creating the life you deserve? That's the question you need to answer. It happens one step at a time, and it's the journey where the fun happens. My goal is to help you figure out how your puzzle pieces come together to design a great life. That means we have to understand where we're going. In other words, what's our purpose? We also need to be healthy enough to be able to do what we want and have the time to do so. We need the financial resources to fund the life we choose. Living alone gets kind of lonely, so creating strong relationships and being part of something bigger spiritually. While we all know this, yet we are stuck listening to those voices in our head that create fear and hold us back from the life we deserve. If you haven't had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create balance in your life. Too often we have so many competing priorities. We need to find a way to keep them in harmony. Many times work takes over or family pulls us in a different direction. A surprise sends our finances into the negative, which is what we're going to learn a lot about today from Brian's story. Having someone to help you look over all those pieces and find balance is the job of a conductor. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you'll need a few Sherpas, guides who know the way and can help you get to the top. In both of these roles, it's you who has to do the work. I'm here to guide, teach, and show you a path. Today, we have Brian Brandow of Debt Discipline. He started his website as a way to stay accountable as he and his family paid off $109,000 worth of consumer debt. Now debt-free, his mission is to help his 3 children prepare for their financial lives, as well as educating other parents and children about the basics of financial literacy. Let's meet Brian. Welcome to Richer Soul, Brian. It's great to have you join us today. So I always ask, and we start at the beginning, what was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
My parents did, I think, an okay job. They gave me some basics. I remember my mom and dad, showing me the checkbook and how to balance a checkbook, handling a checking and savings account. We didn't really talk too much. I'm the youngest of 5 children. I don't really remember too much discussion, beyond the basics of, like I said, a checkbook, savings account, not really having too many money discussions around the dinner table. The one thing I think they did instill in myself and my brothers and sisters was a work ethic. I remember, my dad, working very hard and taking on side jobs, trying to earn extra money. My mom going back to work after, the 5 kids were, once I was in school, I remember my mom going back to work. So, after raising 5 kids, she went back to bring in, additional money. So although there may have not been any, formal, principles around money, there was a sense of, working hard and doing what was needed to support your family.
Well, that's awesome. So what happened next? You started off, you had a great job, you had a good income, but things didn't turn out so good.
Yeah, I think, beyond those basics that my parents kind of showed us, I didn't really have any formal education in around, personal finance in high school or college. And I really just kind of fell into the trap of you just, you make money and you spend money and really never had a plan or a focus on what to do with money. And so, as I graduated from college and got into the workforce and started to see, some success with, in pay increases and promotions, I didn't really have a plan for that money. I just continued to, spend as more money came in, I would increase my spending. Didn't have a focus for savings. And then when I met my wife, we in an early relationship, we spent money on going out and doing things, and then we, eventually got married and then started a family. And so that really just continued, that theme kind of really just carried over. And then we bought a house and we had to do some things, we wanted to do some things around the house. And so we borrowed more money to do that. And then we had credit cards, and it kind of really just, it was this approach where we just, everybody has debt and you take a mortgage out and people have credit cards, and we just really were never thinking for ourselves and looking at, other people have debt, and so we'll take on debt. And it was just a very non-active attitude. We were overspending for years and ended up racking up over six figures of consumer debt.
Wow. That's not good. But then you did something about it. And what caused that change, I guess? You're sitting here now in a situation, you've got six figures of debt. What changed, or was there an aha moment, or?
It's really a rock bottom moment, I like to describe it as, because we at the time we had 5 credit cards and we were close to the limits on each of those cards. And so we were managing minimum payments, and we said, well, if we could afford the minimum payment, then that was our financial plan. We were fine. And we would typically, family, I have 3 children, so we're a family of 5. We would typically take a summer vacation and we would put it on a credit card. We would finance it. That particular summer, it was in June of 2010, we were planning that summer vacation. We didn't have any cash. We didn't have any, savings. And like I said, we were close to the limit on each of those 5 credit cards. So we didn't have the availability to finance that year's summer vacation. And so I actually called each of the 5 credit cards to try to increase my credit limit, because that's how we did it, right? I didn't think anything of it. Just we'll increase the limit and our minimum payment will be bumped up a little bit, but we'll be fine. And I was denied on each one of the 5, luckily. And that's really was the aha moment. But like I said, it was really a rock bottom moment, because what had happened was the creditors looked at the amount of debt I was carrying and realized that they couldn't, I was a liability, that they wouldn't increase my credit lines anymore. And that's really when I looked at it and said, this is a problem. We make too much money to be carrying this amount of debt and not be able to afford a vacation for our family. And so that's really when I sat down with all of the numbers and started to put it in an Excel spreadsheet, started to seek information of, how to get out of debt. What, there had to be some, information out there that could help us, turn the situation around.
And 2010 was that was after the market collapse and all of that. And that was actually a time when credit was getting very tight, and people who had good credit were seeing their credit, instead of being increased, where, banks would say, hey, we're cutting your lines. We know you're good, but we still don't. They were cutting back. So I guess it was a timing thing as well. Had you been in 2005 when they were handing out money like crazy, they probably would have given you a little more. So I guess you got lucky with that.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever really even considered the timing of it, but thinking of it, there's probably a good bit of timing on that with it being 2010. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if at that point if it was an aha moment or that rock bottom moment, but whichever way you want to look at it, it was the catalyst for us to, at least for myself, to look at it and say, we need to make a change. We can't continue down this path of overspending and using credit to finance our lifestyle. So that was really the moment when we decided to make a change.
And so at that point, you said you started writing down your numbers. What were some of the early resources that you utilized to get yourself on the right path?
So initially, like I said, just put everything in an Excel spreadsheet. And then I, went to the internet, right? And I said, okay, there's got to be some get out of debt quick, formula that I can find that, like I said, they didn't teach me in high school or in college, but I should be able to clean this mess up, rather quickly. And I didn't find any of that information. What I found was a bunch of, personal finance blogs. I found a resource by the name of Dave Ramsey. And so I started listening to some of his information, and I saw that he had a book called The Total Money Makeover. And so I went to my local library and picked up a copy, and I read that book probably in 3-4 days. And his baby steps, his 7 baby steps, really just kind of hit home of not being able to stop adding any new debt, cutting expenses, and using the debt snowball to be able to clean up the existing debt that you had. And so the combination of the two things, now having the numbers, our income and expenses down on paper, and now having a plan, I took this now to my wife and said, look, this is, one, we can't afford a summer vacation. Here's a plan that we can utilize to clean this up so that we can afford a future summer vacation. And she was a little hesitant at first. She was a little skeptical, saying, how can we survive without credit cards? And I said, well, it really doesn't matter because we're close to the limits on each of the 5 anyway. So unless we try to change our behavior and do something a little bit differently, how we're going about it right now is not going to work for much longer anyway. So we really need to make a change. But there was a little bit of fear on her part, and even on my part, of saying there was a credit card safety net there, because we were so used to using credit cards for when something broke in the house, an appliance or a flat tire or any type of a little emergency, because we never had cash savings. We were so dependent on those credit cards. So it was a little bit of a scary thought to say we're going to get rid of the credit cards and use cash going forward.
And what about your siblings? Do they have similar stories, or do they have different stories than yours?
We didn't really talk, amongst my brothers and sisters. We'd never really talked about money because it wasn't something we did, growing up. But since they had similar, issues, they had some, debt issues. Since my wife and I were able to clean up our debt, we were more open to talking about money, and then we were able to start having those conversations with our family, and now we have since helped other family members get on track with their money as well. So I've seen them pay off debt and be in a much better financial position today than they were 5-6 years ago as well.
If you're in debt, I highly recommend Dave Ramsey's work. I spent a week with him a few years ago in his master coaching program. I love his baby steps, but after looking through it, I realized I would much prefer to spend my time teaching people about baby step 5, 6, and 7 than 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, yes.
And so my focus has not been on the people in debt, but if you are in debt, I highly recommend his program. And then once you're on solid ground and moving forward and want to work on those higher steps, this is we have a lot of great stuff here for that. So you figured out your place, and this is what I talk about anyway. Everyone should know their numbers, regardless, debt, no debt. You should all be focused on your numbers. Where's your money going? and then have a plan. So you convinced your wife, and what happened next?
We just got to work. We cut up the credit cards. We looked at cutting expenses so that we could free up some additional cash to throw, additional money at the credit card debt. We really just started working a plan. The first few months were difficult because we had to make changes. We had to, make decisions on how we were going to be spending our money and really change behavior. So we stopped eating out as much. We cut out some luxury items within our, household subscription services. And we just found ways to be able to cut back. But after 2 or 3 months, it really it became easy. Those things that we eliminated, we really didn't miss. And we freed up money and really just worked that plan for about 50 months. And we were able to pay off that debt. And we had a cash savings. We kind of followed Dave Ramsey's plan to the T. We had a $1,000 emergency fund for, those 50 months. And when something broke, we had the cash to be able to fix it. We had a dishwasher blow up. We had a flat tire. We had a windshield crack, those type of things. So we were able to survive any of those bumps in the road along the way. Unlike the years prior where we would rely on credit card to handle any of those things.
And it's funny, they call it an emergency fund. I'm like, it's not an emergency, it's a life happens fund. Your tire goes flat,
Right.
Things break.
Right.
That's just part of life. It's not an emergency. It's just life, and somehow we don't seem to plan for that. So out of curiosity, what happened to your happiness levels when you started spending less?
It really increased. And the reason why it increased was because we were in control now. We were in control of our money. We had a plan. It wasn't when, like you said, when life happened, we were in control. It wasn't a stressful time when the tire went flat or the dishwasher blew up because we had money to be able to pay for it. So we were in control of those things. We didn't worry about it. We didn't stress about it. My wife and I, were communicating better. Our relationship got better because we were in sync with how we were spending money. And so, we were meeting, communicating, weekly, monthly about how we were spending money. And we were, looking at shared goals, and we looped in our 3 children because we wanted them to be aware of the changes, because we were going to have to say no a little bit more around the house if they wanted something, or we were going to be cooking at home more or packing lunches more often, those type of things. So we wanted them to understand why mom and dad would be making changes and maybe why we would be saying no a little bit more often. So we looped them in and we explained to them. I mean, we went down and we showed them how much money we made. We showed them pay stubs. We explained to them how much, the mortgage was, how much the electric bill was. I mean, we gave them basically the entire rundown of the budget. So they really had an understanding. So, if I yelled at them to turn off the light, unplug their phone, there was meaning behind it because they understood the relationship between the electric bill at the end of the month. So we just really wanted them to have an understanding, and we wanted it to be a family effort, a group effort.
And how did they react?
They were fine. Surprisingly, kids are very resilient. There was no, they didn't mind at all. I mean, they took it in stride. They, if we would say no to something, ice cream at home, getting ice cream out, they were fine. Which was one of the concerns that I think my wife and I first had were, well, what are the kids going to think? But they were fine. And it was one of the ways that I was able to kind of first talk to them about money. Was what I found was it was important to incorporate things that they were interested in speaking to them about money. I mentioned ice cream. It's our kids' favorite dessert. And so we would get ice cream from, the ice cream truck, and for a family of, or just the 3 kids, or if all of us got it, it could be, $15, $20 if the family of 5 got ice cream at the ice cream truck. You do that, twice a week, it's very expensive. So I explained to them one night, I said, look, we're not getting ice cream from the ice cream truck any longer. It's not in our budget. And I said, but we could take that same, $15, $20 and go to the supermarket, and you can have ice cream for the month if we buy ice cream at the at the supermarket. So I said, well, which would you rather have? Would you rather have ice cream from the ice cream truck, once, or would you rather have ice cream for the month? And they agreed they would rather have ice cream for the month. And so, off to the supermarket we went, and we got plenty of ice cream. What I found was just incorporating a money lesson within something they were interested in really kind of helped keep their attention. We talked about smartphones at one time, and we spoke about, did they understand how much a phone, cost on a monthly basis, or how much the actual device cost to purchase, and how long you would have to work, if you made minimum wage to pay for that phone, things like that. So, that was part of their education, along the way.
And I do the same thing with my kids. We have the ice cream conversation. We've had it many times when they were much younger. And now that they're older, we'll go once in a while and have ice cream out. But it's a rarity. And they understand that when you go out for ice cream, it's $5 for a bowl. And when you go to the supermarket, that's, 2 half gallons, if not more, depending on if they're on sale. And that you have to make choices. The ice cream from the store is just as good as the ice cream from the ice cream place. It's just that it's at home. Kids are pretty good with that when they understand, and when they they're given the choice to make and shown the options and how that comes together.
Yeah, no, agreed.
So why do you think people don't have money conversations?
That's a good question. I obviously wish that, we would have had those conversations early on. I don't know. I really don't understand why somebody would not, because it's really it's something that you're going to use for your entire life. So why wouldn't you have that conversation? It's when I think back about my, childhood, like I said, my parents had a very good work ethic, and I remember my dad, working overtime or, trying to do some side jobs to bring in extra money. So there was a focus on earning money, but I don't remember those, I don't remember any conversations around it. It's really strange to me now, knowing what I've learned over the last, several years, why somebody would not want to give that to, family members or certainly children. I think of it, my 3 children now, I want to give them as much information as possible so that they have the best head start as they're now dealing with money in their own lives, so they can, right from the beginning, make the best choices, possible.
Absolutely. And I do the same thing with my kids as well. I think it's a cultural thing in America. I think more nowadays people are talking more about money, and the more that people post about it and have blogs like yours, the more people become comfortable. So you've shared your journey of getting out of debt, and you continue to do so on your blog, Debt Discipline. What are people saying to you? What are you hearing feedback-wise from the people who read your information?
There is, there's a combination. There's a number of people that, like me, wish they would have started, much earlier. But, I think there are more conversations that are starting to happen earlier. And there are a number of people that are getting involved, more earlier with their money and making better decisions. We're seeing some early retirement, the FIRE movement, with people saving a lot of money and being able to leave traditional jobs and pursue freelance work or doing work that they're more passionate about. So, I think we're seeing things really evolve over the last 5-8 years in the financial space with how people are dealing with their money. I've been amazed with the people that come to my website, my blog and other blogs that are seeking information just like I was, 7 years ago, and now getting their finances in order. What I find is there is a need for it. There's so many people that still need just some basic financial education, and they're in various stages of life. There could be, in their 20s, just out of college, or, 30s, 40s. I mean, it's a wide variety of people that still need just some basic guidance with their money.
I would bet the number is 80%. 4 out of 5 people need tremendous help with their money. And I think that because if you look at statistics and you see the percent of people who have money, it kind of makes that quite clear, which is a shame because we spend so much time in school learning about everything that they should teach us about money. So on this journey, you had another hiccup. After you started to get out of debt, you lost a job. How did that go?
Yeah, so we were actually, it was after we were consumer debt free. So after we paid off our $109,000 worth of consumer debt, and we had a larger, cash savings in place. I was, in work one morning and called down to HR, and they said your position has been eliminated. You're, no longer needed. And I left. Obviously, my first call was to my wife to let her know I was coming home and that I was unemployed. But I wasn't overly concerned because we had our finances in order and we had a cash savings. The company I was with for over 20 years. So there was some severance package involved and some insurance for, a bit of health insurance coverage for a period of time. So I really left with not that big of a concern because I knew I could, I would land another job, and we were in a very good spot, financially. We had a plan. We had, we were in control. If that was 4 or 5 years earlier when we were still heavily in debt and not in control of our money, it would have been a panic. It would have been a totally different situation. It would have been panic. I'm so glad that the timing of it worked out the way it did, because I couldn't imagine that in the earlier situation we would have been in so much trouble. And I don't know how the family dynamic, the relation, my wife and I's relationship and the net dynamic at home would have been. I think it would have been a very stressful, period. I'm sure we would have survived, but it would have been at a much more difficult type situation. But so, I was out of work for about eight months, landed a new position, and much happier at the new position. And, we used some savings and worked, continued to work our budget, through that time, but we came out okay.
That's awesome. And I think that's, when you're in control and when you know where you're at and where you're going, it really takes away all the stress. And even when you have to face something like a job loss, it sounds like you did not have to go through that stress at all. And I think people need to realize, you were at a job for 20 years. Being a job isn't always secure. And that's why it's important to build multiple streams of income so that if one day somebody walks in and says, you no longer have a job, you have things in place and the control to be able to handle that situation. Because it's happening more and more today. Companies are quickly becoming obsolete and entire industries are going away as brand new industries pop up. So you have to be prepared for that.
Oh, yeah. No, and I think it was a good lesson for my children to witness, to see. They were in high school. My son and daughter, my oldest son and daughter, were in high school at the time. My youngest son was in middle school. And so, although, I obviously don't wish a job loss on anybody, but the experience was, I think, good for them to see, to understand that as they graduated high school and have gone now, my son and daughter are in their first year of college. it was a good lesson for them to see, to be able to understand that the job force, that, like you said, that when you work for somebody else, your position is never guaranteed. And although I was there for a long period of time and making very good money, I was there one day and the next day I was not. And so it was a good lesson for them to see from that perspective, the employment, working for somebody else, but then also see the power of having control of your finances and having a budget and having cash savings, seeing the other side of it, that you can survive an event like that with a plan in place. So I would much rather have not gone through it, but since we did, it was a good, like I said, lesson for them to see, and hopefully, file away in the back of their head for, as they move through into the workforce, they can, have that experience to, pull from in the future.
So I always go by the saying, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And it seems in this situation, you reacted well. You had a plan in place. And even though it wasn't the greatest thing to happen, there were a lot of good things that came out of that. And I think we need to look at that in our own lives, is if we experience failure, or if something happens to us that we don't exactly appreciate in the moment, that going through that does have benefits. And dealing with the struggles of life do have other benefits that are out there. And sometimes that's very hard to see in the moment. But when you look back, you realize how helpful it was to have to deal with something like that. So your kids are in college. How are they paying for college?
So it's a combination. We are taking on some student loans, but they are working. So the job loss did kind of set us off course a little bit. Our goal was to continue to save and help cash flow their college at that point. But being out of work for a period of time and depleting our cash savings, and then taking on a new role, kind of took us off course a little bit. So we've our son and daughter. I have twins, so we have two in school at the same time. They are taking on some student loan debt, and we are helping them as much as we can. And they are working. So my son and daughter are working, during college, and they're working on summers. And so they've built up some savings to pay for, books and other expenses during the semester. And their plan is to come out with as little debt as possible when they graduate.
And how much was the cost of the particular college they chose relevant to their decision to go there?
So my daughter is in an in-state school, and she's away, so there's room and board included, and so her total cost for the 4-year degree is roughly around $80,000, so about $20,000 a year. But she also has almost close to 30 credits from high school. So taking, some AP classes and some college level classes within high school. So our guess is that she's going to graduate well under, she'll graduate probably in 3.5 years. And then my son, he's at a private school, a local private school, but he's living home. So he's commuting, and he was awarded a very handsome scholarship at the school. So his total cost is probably under $10,000 a year.
That's awesome. That's a good number.
And he also has a number of AP and college level credits that he transferred in. So our expectation is that he's going to graduate, well under, probably 3.5 years as well.
And it sounds like they did the right things in high school. They were starting to work ahead so that they get a head start on college and can reduce their college costs, which is quite important.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I think, that's one of the things that we started to look at was, what ways could we reduce cost, ahead of even, attending college, looking at scholarship opportunities, AP classes, what were ways that we could, cost-effective ways that we could reduce, the college costs before they even, stepped on campus. That in some cases, scholarship opportunities can start, as early as, your freshman year. You can start applying to, some scholarship opportunities in ninth grade. So, and you need to continue to apply for scholarships through your senior year in college. I think sometimes parents overlook that. They think, okay, once my son or daughter is in college, that I can stop. I don't continue to apply for scholarships, but I'm after my son and daughter every couple of weeks. Have you applied? Have you looked at any new scholarship opportunities? So our goal is to continue. So we hope that we can even reduce their cost, in the future with potential, more scholarships.
And it's good because you raised financially savvy kids. They understand and they're willing to do the work to help out and bring in the money to pay for college. So shifting gears slightly, you've started to do something different, which is to get involved in your local community and teach kids about money. Is that correct? What's that all about?
Sure. Yeah. So, we worked obviously with our 3 children, and we continue to work with them, involving them in the budget and just teaching them as much as we could. But what I really quickly realized was that they were not learning any of these skills within their school district. So not in any of the elementary or the middle school or the high school level. And so I had approached my superintendent and asked about the opportunity. And she was forming some committees at the time to look at some of the curriculum within the school district. And so I volunteered my time. And that was about 3 years ago. And my focus was on promoting, financial literacy within the school district. And I've worked on a number of, various committees over the last few years. And last year, we were able to present to our local Board of Education a 3-year plan to introduce financial literacy to the entire school district. So at the elementary, middle school, and high school level, and it was approved. And so this year, we have curriculum that will be taught in each of the grade levels. And then we continue to work our plan over the next 2 years. And the end goal is to have a full year class that is in the high school that will be mandatory for graduation. So basically a personal finance literacy class at the high school that will be a mandatory class that students must take before they can graduate.
And it's wonderful that you're giving back in that way. I don't know if you're aware, Dave Ramsey does have a high school program as well. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes. Yep. That's one of the resources that we've looked into. One of the first year challenges was there was no cost. And I know his program is there are some costs associated with it, but most times it's sponsored. So we're looking at some of those resources in future years.
And so when you do the financial literacy for the year, what is the focus of it? What are you teaching the kids?
So we're teaching at, like I said, at different levels. So at the elementary level, it's really, some basic concepts, wants versus needs. At the middle school level, it gets more involved with looking at career choice and looking at what different careers could make and what the different careers could cost. Do you need to go to do you need to attend college? Do you need to attend a trade school? So looking at, what, really a career, you're looking at career opportunities and then looking at, well, what are your different paths for those different careers? And then at the high school, it's really looking at all of the different, areas of personal finance, looking at credit and debt and investments, and really covering the gamut of all the different topics within personal finance. We really want to be able to provide a well-rounded student, so when they graduate, they really have all of the basics covered. And so if we're starting at the elementary level and then consistently follow up every year and like I said, all the way through the various grades, we think we'll have a good foundation built at the elementary, and then it's reinforced every year throughout.
Have you received any pushback?
No, it was well received. I mean, it is really shifting, and we're looking at really other areas as well. Financial literacy is not the only area. They're looking at really teaching students life skills, looking at computer literacy. It's really literacy skills of making sure that when students graduate high school, that they are ready for life, ready for adulthood, ready to be able to handle the challenges of the world. And so looking at not just memorizing, history facts or, multiplication tables, really having life skills that will take them forward. We did a small survey of probably about 300 students that had graduated, and there were 5 areas that they wish they had learned more about within the high school, and one of the areas was finance. That they didn't learn enough about money within the high school, and when they went out into the real world, whether that was military or college or just getting a job, that they wish they had learned more about money because they were struggling now post high school handling money. Our district is looking at focusing on when a student graduates, that they're well-rounded to be able to handle the real world. And so that's why they're focusing on, like I said, financial literacy, computer literacy, communication, personal literacy, being able to communicate, not just, texting in codes and emojis, and being able to really have a conversation with another person. So they're really focusing on with life skills, which I think is a very important aspect for our students, our children today, because I think we're getting away from with some of the education, we're getting away from some of those things, and so for someone to really be successful, we really need to focus on some of those basic things.
Absolutely, and I think it's rare that schools are doing what your school's doing. I know they're getting more involved in financial literacy, but to be that forward thinking and do it beyond just financial literacy, but life literacy, it seems like schools used to do that, and somewhere along the way we stopped doing that. And it's good to hear that people are actually getting back to doing that, and that is where the focus is going back to. So congrats for all that hard work.
Thanks.
So you're going to be showing a movie in the next couple of weeks about college and the costs of college, correct?
Yeah, so we actually held that event last week. We did. Yeah, so this was with so one of the other areas that I volunteer in is we have a local a community coalition that I'm involved with as well. And we did a presentation called Avoiding Student Debt. And it was an evening that I hosted. We showed the documentary called Broke, Busted, and Disgusted. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the documentary, but it outlines the cost of college. The host goes around and speaks with college students and graduates and university financial aid officers and various colleges. And it really just highlights that students really don't understand what they're getting themselves into when they sign up for student loans or understand the total cost of college. So they don't really understand that they take out the student loan, and then 6 months after they graduate, they need to start paying them back, and what the cost could be depending on how much they borrowed. The event that we hosted was really just to help educate students and parents that they need to start having these conversations early with their potential college student. They need to start looking at opportunities, scholarships and like AP classes and ways to be able to reduce the cost. But they also need to look at the complete picture of, if they're deciding on a certain career path and college, they need to look at, well, what's the job market going to look like in 4 years when I graduate for that area? If my potential salary in a chosen field is $50,000, but I'm going to go to a college that's going to cost, a private school that may cost me $200,000 for a degree, well, then maybe I need to make a better choice up front and maybe go to a community college for 2 years and then an in-state school to finish, and so to reduce my overall cost. And we want parents and students to start having those conversations, because my experience with the high school and guidance counselors was that they're very good at the nuts and bolts of when students need to get their applications in and when they need to take their SATs. And the guidance counselors do a tremendous amount of work keeping several, in some cases, 100 or so teenagers on target with deadlines and information and paperwork is a big job. But they're not looking at that complete picture of, well, if the student goes to this college and has to take on this amount of debt, but what's his end game with an actual job and career, and what that debt may put him in for 10 or 15 years on a repayment plan. So it's that complete picture, that return on investment of your degree. So that was what our presentation was about, was trying to help educate and make sure that people were aware that they need to make a very good choice and not just fall in love with the prettiness of a campus or the Starbucks that's in the student hall or whatever it may be, that they really need to make a smart choice, because it's really the first, 17 or 18-year-old may not make the best financial decision, and it's really the first major decision in their life. So it's important that we start looking at these things from a financial perspective.
Absolutely. And if they do it wrong, they can be saddled with debt forever. And unfortunately, a lot of these federal loans are not dischargeable, so you can't bankrupt your way out of them. Back in episode 15, we had someone on from Nitro, which is nitrocollege.com, and they have a cool calculator. You actually go in, you put in the school that you're going to and the degree that you're getting. And what it does is it shows you how much you're paying for your degree at that school. And it asks you if you're getting scholarships and all of that. And then it shows you the average salary for a job with that degree from that school. And then it pretty much is red to green. It sends off warning bells to tell you you're going to that college paying that much money for that degree is going to get you in trouble. Or it'll tell you, hey, going to that college, getting that degree, and that's how much you're paying, you're in the green. Life is going to be good for you. So you may want to check that out.
Yeah, I will. Not heard of that. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
I have seen Broke, Busted, and Disgusted, and that was with Adam Carroll. He's a great guy. I know he's doing a lot of wonderful things in the teaching people about money as well. And I made my kids watch that movie as well, so that we don't get stuck in that situation. And that's the conversation in our house. It's very direct. You will pick a college, because it's a good fit for you. And that's one thing I've noticed people aren't doing, is talking about what's a good fit for you in college. And then B, how much is it going to cost? Because you have to figure out how to pay for college. If you're smart enough to go to college, you should be smart enough to figure out how to pay for it without taking loans and getting yourself into massive debt. So I think when you make kids sit down and make intentional choices, they will step up and do that, but you've got to give them the framework. And it sounds like you're creating the framework You're creating the conversations. And just like, we talked about at the beginning, when you and your wife started having financial conversations, things got better and you made wiser choices. And now as kids and their parents start having these conversations around something that may easily cost over $200,000, we have to make wise choices, not just pick, as you said, because the cafeteria is great. I got to tell you, I can spend $200,000 and get a lot better food than that cafeteria if I'm going to throw a party for 4 years.
Right.
And unfortunately, nobody is having these conversations. And the college is out to get the best student. They're not worried about your debt levels, and the guidance counselors are more about trying to help you pick what you're interested in. And nobody's looking at the most important thing, the money behind it. And it sounds like you're starting to do some work there, and that is awesome. Has there been good feedback from the parents from your program that you had?
Yeah. So we had a group probably about, we wish we had more, but we had about between 30 and about 35 people at the event. We're hoping to do more in the future, but we had great feedback from the people in attendance. We had a mixed group. We had a group of, some parents who have kids that are, in high school and are approaching college over the next, few years. And then we had a group that currently has students in college students. So, and they're looking at what ways could we do reduce costs now? It's that continuing effort to, look at ways of applying for scholarships, maybe becoming an RA on campus if you're living on campus. So we were just really trying to give them as much information as possible, the resources and information to help them. But the feedback was very positive. But that was my opening remark was you need to start having these money conversations with your kids. I mean, it really starts with that conversation.
That it does. The underlying theme here is pretty simple. You've got to have money conversations, and you've got to know what the situation is and put pen to paper and start doing calculations, whether it's your budget, whether it's the return on investment in your education, whatever it is, sit down, put pen to paper, understand where you're at, understand where you want to go, figure out how much it's going to cost, and figure out if the money situation makes sense and that this is a wise or an unwise choice that you're making as you go forward. Is there anything else that you would like to share today that we have not talked about?
No, I think we've covered it. I hope people will start those. If they haven't had those conversations already, I hope they will start them. And if they are having them, I hope they are going well.
As do I. So if people would like to find you and connect, learn a little bit more about what you're doing, or maybe ask about how they can better train their kids, where can they do that?
You can find me on my blog. It's debtdiscipline.com, or on Twitter, it's same at Debt Discipline, or I have a Facebook page as well. It's Debt Discipline on Facebook. Any one of those spots you can find me at.
Thank you for joining us today, Brian. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate it.
I encourage you to check out Brian and his site, www.debtdiscipline.com. Clearly, where you focus your attention is where you get results. Brian found that out the hard way. But once he focused on his numbers and on his money, and he started having those conversations with his wife and family, that all turned around quickly, and now he's living the life he chooses to lead. If you have kids approaching college age, don't forget, go back and check out episode 15 with Mike from Nitro to learn more about how to pay for college. If there's someone you know who could benefit from what we talked about today, please share. It helps you to build social capital and create better relationships. And it might help people to start having that money conversation that everyone should be having with friends and family. And they'll appreciate you for it. So, I'll give you a quick call to action today. If you haven't already put your numbers together, put your numbers together. Understand where your money's going. Understand what money you have already today. If you go back through, we've talked about the balance sheet in the past, and your statement of cash flows. If you haven't already gotten that down, now's the time. You see from Brian's story how helpful that is. What's preventing you from moving forward? And who are you putting on your team to build the life you deserve? Ready to take massive action? I'm here to help you build your path and create the life you deserve. Thanks for listening. You can always find me at Rocky at Richer Soul. Have an abundant week.